Hello, 8th grade, and others. I'm putting up these videos on YouTube as I think they, for the most part, would be advantageous for anybody, not just students at YBH. Uh, yesterday we talked about, we went to kind of round clockwise, let's say. We started in Germany the first day. We went up to, well, you're going to see the opposite because you're seeing a mirror image of me, but we went up to northern Eastern Europe and to southern Eastern Europe, and now we're coming across to Western Europe. And Western Europe, for our purposes today, consists of primarily France and Austria. And in order to understand what's going on in Western Europe from a Jewish perspective, we have to go back to Napoleon in the 1800s, specifically in the 1810s. Napoleon conquered Europe as an emperor. He was an emperor and a supreme ruler. But he paradoxically also represented the idea of emancipation. Please make sure to write that down. Emancipation is Emancipation. So write Napoleon brought emancipation to the world. This is something which came out of the French Revolution. The French Revolution, when the French deposed their kingdom, which had been in effect for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So they decided that they want liberty, equality, and fraternity. And whatever that means for us, whatever those words mean, was something which remained even after Napoleon became an emperor, shortly after, sometime after the French Revolution, was the idea of emancipation. All men, not women yet, all men are equal. Meaning that there is no such thing as nobility versus the common people. Everybody is the same in the eyes of the government. Now, this also brought about a new situation for the Jews, because Jews were emancipated. And this was a tremendously new idea, because throughout the last 1,500 years or so, going out close on to 2,000 years, the Jews had been a second-class citizenry, if one could even call them citizens, within all the countries of Europe. They did not have the same rights and privileges as other citizens of countries. They were not considered to have the status of citizens in the sense of being members of the society in the nation in which they lived. So Napoleon came along and took that spirit of emancipation. He began it in France. And in France, actually, he convened what he called the Sanhedrin of great rabbis, most of which were Orthodox and big rabbis, if not all. I wrote an article about this once, if you're really interested. But the Napoleon Sanhedrin was meant to deal with questions which he wanted to resolve, usually in a specific way, which had to do with making the Jewish religion more compatible with the general atmosphere in France at the time. The Sanhedrin did make some interesting decisions and try to get out of making any major changes, more or less successfully. But Napoleon did convene that Sanhedrin for that purpose. Later on, as Napoleon spread his conquest across Europe, he introduced the idea of emancipation of the Jews throughout Europe. By the way, you should be taking notes on this. I'm not going to stop again for a few minutes at least to tell you what you should write down, what you shouldn't write down, but this is all something which you should retain for the rest of your life, if at all possible. Then, including my ancestral homeland of Germany. In my ancestral homeland of Germany, when my ancestors lived in the little town of Bischofchen, which is in Bavaria in southwest Germany, Jews, until the advent of Napoleon, did not necessarily have family names. It was something which was people didn't have because they weren't necessary. But most of the time, the Jews are called Avram Yud, Sarah Yudne, whatever they're called by as Jews. But Napoleon, in the quest to smooth over the various different levels of society, decreed that everybody had to have a last name, first name and last name. And that's when the Beckhoffers took the name Beckhofer, which comes from the town of Bischofchen, where they resided at the time. It's an interesting phenomenon which I do not know how to explain, which is that very often Jews were the ones who took as their last names the name of the city or the area in which they resided. It's interesting. I think we might have mentioned this once in the past. So in any event, Napoleon goes and he spreads emancipation across Europe. And in Eastern Europe, the Balatanya, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, is frightened by the ideas of Jews being emancipated. And many Jews in other Eastern European countries are frightened by the idea of Jews being emancipated. And they regard Napoleon as satanic in his quest, because Jews are only going to function well as Jews if they are isolated. Isolated is not the right term. Suppressed. Gemara says somewhere, Yon Yusel Yisrael. Poverty is good for Jews. In other words, Buzz says, Vaishmani Shum Vayivot. Sometimes the Jews get too fat and they kick because they are more, they want to enjoy the luxuries and excesses of this world to a greater extent. So therefore, to open up the doors of the ghettos, which was Napoleon was proposing to do, the Jews thought, these Rabbanim thought was very, very dangerous, and would lead ultimately to assimilation, conversion, and intermarriage, and that happened most of the time. So the Rabbanim opposed it. The Baal says, Lubavitch, they have a whole story about how the Balatanya single-handedly caused Napoleon's defeat in Russia at the gates of Moscow, and one of the ways in which he did it was by using what became the French national anthem during the Revolution, and for Kedusha. He took the Marseillaise, which goes and use it for, now they use it for Achmoni Zaken, also Mashiach. I don't know if that's what they use it for. But the attitude in Eastern Europe was hostile to the emancipation. And certainly it stopped when it got to Germany. It did not continue further east. On the other hand, Sham Shmuel Hirsch felt that the emancipation was a tremendous opportunity for Jews now to be Mekadesh Shem Shamayim, to create Kiddush Hashem no matter where they found themselves. He knew there was a danger, but he thought HaKadosh Baruch was giving us the opportunity to go out and show the world what Torah means and what it means to be a Torah Jew. That's how he approached emancipation. He was one of the few who actually approached it as a positive. Now, the emancipation obviously had roots in France and had its most manifestation in France. And Jews started becoming very, very much involved in French society. And one of the things which happened when Jews became involved in French society, of course, they started assimilating, but not just assimilating, they started entering positions of power in the government and in the army, which previously were closed to Jews. And that led, in the late 1800s, to a backlash. And that backlash was the Dreyfus Affair. And I will show you now a brief video about the Dreyfus Affair and its ramifications. Now, so one of its ramifications was the jolting of Theodor Herzl, who was an Austrian, Western European, emancipated, non-observant Jew, who was jarred to his core by what happened in the Dreyfus Affair. So I'm going to show you, you should take some notes, some of the notes which you, this is not a comprehensive history of the Dreyfus Affair. That's not really the scope of our conversation now, but who Dreyfus was, what happened to him, how he was framed, how he was degraded, and how that influenced Theodor Herzl. That's all in film. Okay? So I'm going to stop here and come back to you later. And we're back. Now that you've seen the Dreyfus Affair, so I like, of course, I hope you took notes during that and spoke about Albert Dreyfus and what happened to him and how he was framed and how he was a patriotic Frenchman that even after they degraded him, he still shouted not Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, but Vive la France, Vive l'armée. And in fact, he was assimilated to that extent in a few short years. This is about 80 years after Napoleon emancipated the Jews. He still already is a full assimilated Frenchman, and France is his patriotic fatherland. And he went to, what's not told in the videos, he went off to Devil's Island, which was a penal colony on an island in the Atlantic for several years until a courageous author, who I think is mentioned, Émile Zola, who was not Jewish, led a movement called the Dreyfusards, the Dreyfusards and the anti-Dreyfusards, to try and clear his name. And eventually his name was cleared and he was brought back to France, and he was reinstated in the army, eventually rising from his trial rank of captain to the rank of colonel. So Herzl was and not evincing, I think he died in 1936, if I recall correctly, lived a long life, but never evincing any specific Jewish qualities which would run counter to his assimilated French personality. But Dreyfus aroused Theodor Herzl, and Theodor Herzl turned the world around. Theodor Herzl, again, himself was an assimilated Jew from Vienna who thought that Judaism would eventually be assimilated into the other world's religions. Perhaps even Jews would convert to Catholicism or some other Christianity, and then everything would be fine and dandy. Everybody would live happily ever after. But since he was a journalist, he was sent by his newspaper in Austria to cover the Dreyfus trial. And when he saw the Dreyfus trial, he saw that anti-Semitism is so profoundly entrenched in certain parts of society that the assimilation was never going to work. The Jew can never lose his identity. He'll always remain the Jew, even if he tries, to do it by becoming changing religions. And therefore, he realized that we have to look for something else. We have to identify ourselves as something else. We can't, even if we try to identify ourselves as French, as Austrian, as German, that's not going to save us in the long run, and that's not going to resolve the Jewish problem. The problem of how Jews can best function in this world and be able to live normal, productive lives. And about Herzl, there's a tremendous degree of controversy. And again, I'm not telling you what to write down. Please just take notes. There's a tremendous amount of, I'm submitting them both, of course, afterwards. And there's a tremendous amount of controversy as to whether Herzl was good for the Jews or bad for the Jews. Herzl, at one point, considered taking the African country of Uganda from the British as a homeland for the Jews because his Zionism was a very, very secular Zionism. He had very little to do, except emotionally, with Eretz Yisrael being the homeland of the Jewish people. So therefore, many people looked at him as almost a Mashiach Sheker, a false Messiah like Shabtai Tzvi. On the other hand, Rav Kook, in one of his essays, seems to indicate that Herzl was so important and significant in history that he may well be some Mashiach ben Yosef. That was his essay for Herzl. My personal, somewhat positive attitude towards Herzl comes from one of my heroes, Rabbi Avraham Kaplan, and I'm going to read you what I translated from Rabbi Avraham Elia. Rabbi Avraham Elia, although secular Zionism, cultural doctrines made Rabbi Avraham Elia uncomfortable with the Mizrahi, that's religious Zionists, we'll get to, not today, perhaps tomorrow, actually next week, unless school starts again, then we'll get to it in school. When there's perhaps allegiance to the movement, that's religious Zionists being part of the Zionist movement, he nonetheless recognized Herzl's accomplishment. And this is a quote, translated. He, Herzl, did not teach us Torah because he was never taught Torah. He taught us rather to say four words in English, on occasions that until he came, we had neither dared nor been able to utter. I am a Jew. You know who made that into a song? Benny Friedman. Ivri Anochi. We're always able to recite these words in the base medrash next to our standards. We're even capable of reading and writing them. We could declare ourselves a nation in any place we wanted, except in that one place where the nations of the world were to be found, in the international political arena. They were seen as wandering sheep, like one Telzer. Telz was a place in Lithuania where a certain thinker came from, who is quoting, once put it, not a nation, not a congregation, rather a flock. Not like sheep in a flock that are petted and fed, but like those that are shorn and slaughtered. When a European ruler asked a Jew, who are you? Would he respond simply, I am a Jew, without any qualifications or explanations? He would answer, I am a Jew, but also German, also French, also English, etc. Along came Herzl, the first from among us to reach an international political arena that serves as a world court, and respond openly, freely, and effortlessly and guilelessly, I am a Jew. Moreover, I was stolen from the land of the Jews, Eretz Ivrim, and here I've done nothing, for they have placed me in the pit. Some will see Babor. The Jewish nation is a nation unto itself like all other nations. Indeed, it is special, and possesses a unique life force that sustains it. Do you not sense the hidden workings of divine providence? I know that just as the rejuvenation of the Jewish national spirit had to come, so will finally come in the unseen future the rejuvenation of our Torah spirit. We do see paths. We do not see the paths, but we do see the footsteps. And I know that I must strive towards this. And God returns to Zion, returns also to Torah from Zion. Torah meets Zion. Now that's an important point, which I think we're going to leave for next time, since it's the trend towards shorter lessons is appreciated by the student body, which is that the national identity, which Herzl now came and brought out in a way which has not been apparent in almost 2,000 years, was separate from the Torah. It was God who returns to Zion, not even God necessarily, but it was Zion without Torah. Not Torah meets Zion, but Zion in and of itself. In fact, in one of the platforms, which meets the political programs of, I believe, the Second World Zionist Congress, that says that Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism, with religion. Zionism has nothing to do with religion, which is a fascinating idea, which we'll explore in Mitzvah Hashem next time. Again, we're continuing to speak about what happened in Western Europe, or Austria, where Herzl was from, France, where Dreyfus was from, and we should be zocher to continue. I am always open and invite feedback, just like you gave me feedback on the forums, which I gave you before we went into quarantine. You can always let me know if going too fast, going too slow, interesting, not interesting. I'm happy to adjust accordingly. Take care.